You are listening to the Conquering Everest podcast. This here, well, it's episode 23. Welcome to the Conquering Everest podcast. My name is Brian Talor, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of your day or night here with me. Now, in today's episode, I have a conversation with Bev Joy Ehrlich. Bev is a transformational life and relationships coach. Her core passion is to educate and empower all of us to live with a deeper level of consciousness, authentic expression, alignment, and contribution. Now, I've had a coaching session with Bev, and it brought up a lot of emotional things from my past, but the beauty of it is Bev knew how to help me be present in the moment and how to process that pain from the past. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Bev's YouTube site where you'll find that coaching session, at least half of it, okay? I gotta admit, I forgot to hit record, but we caught the second half of it, so there's still something for you to see, and I'll have a link to her YouTube site in the description below. And we are having more coaching sessions, more of which we will share with you, so make sure you subscribe to Bev's YouTube channel so you could see me get a little bit emotional. I'm an emotional guy, and Bev brought out definitely brought out the emotion in me. Now, before we get into today's conversation, I need you to do me a favor. It's real simple, I promise. And no, I'm not asking for any money. All I need you to do is make sure you give this podcast a follow and share with your family and friends on social media. Now, if you have an option to give it a thumbs up, then please do give it a thumbs up. And if you want to get in touch with me, it's real simple. You can contact me via email, brian@conqueringeverest.com. You can also find Conquering Everest Podcast on Facebook as well as on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave all the relevant links in the description below. Without further ado, though, let's get to my conversation with Bev Joy Ehrlich. Bev Joy Ehrlich, welcome to the Conquering Everest Podcast.
Thank you, Brian. So lovely to be here with you.
And I know you gave me kind of the cheat code for your last name, but if you want to go ahead for our listeners and pronounce it the correct way, we'll make sure they have the correct pronunciation because my poor American accent can't quite get there.
It's okay. So I say Ehrlich. It's actually a German origin, and the Germans tend to say Ehrlich.
Ehrlich, yeah.
But all pronunciations are welcome, so that's fine.
All right. Well, Bev, as we get into things here today, did you want to take a few moments here in the beginning and just introduce yourself to our listeners? You can go as far back or as high level as you want with it. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, so let me think where I'll start from here. I live in Israel. I have 4 children and almost 8 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
And I've lived here most of my life. I was born in South Africa, and my background is in education and psychology. And the last few years, I was exposed to a wonderful mentor named Thomas Hubel. I came to him through several other coaching experiences that I had and learnings and teachings that I went through. But landing with him is really a place where I see the work I do on relationship is so true. It lands with people, it speaks to them, that all our joy and all our challenges in our lives come from relationship. And very often, the way we show up in our adult lives is based on traumatic experiences through our attachment that we had in our early bonding with our parents or our early caregivers. And if not processed or integrated, they show up in our adult relationships where we might show up as being a little bit reactive, we're behaving as a younger part of ourselves, and we're not able to manage our relationships when we're behaving as a childlike parts. It's kind of like we all really, according to Terry Real, whom I've also learned so much from, we're all looking to meet our gods or goddesses who will complete us. And what we actually meet in a relationship is somebody who's as imperfect as we are. And in an intimate relationship, there's that collision of our imperfections, and the rest of our time together, we learn how to manage that. And when we see that we're being triggered in a relationship, we often like, I'm damn well going to get what I need from you. I'm going to control you. I'm going to back
Mhm.
also away from you. I'm going to get what I need so badly from you. And the minute we can stop and say, hey, this person isn't my adversary, he's not my enemy. He's actually a kind of more evolved part of who I am. And we can sit with that for a minute and be in the presence of what's going on here. Why am I so triggered? Then we can start to integrate. We can start to understand what's going on for us. And it's not that the person will heal us, but the relationship begins to heal us when we recognize that we're reacting to something that's not quite in front of us right now. We're reacting to a past, a distant past. And once the relationship begins to heal us, I begin to behave in a different way in the relationship. And that's where there's so much growth, excuse me, innovation and opportunity that comes to the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'll ask you, how long have you been a transformational life and relationship coach, and what led you to this line of work?
Well, I think probably you'll hear this from most coaches. We've always been the go-to person that people feel we hear them, we listen to them. So I started off as a dream coach where I was guiding people through steps that I'd learned on how to create a dream. Steps that are very important to understand what's integrity, what's our intention, what are our doubts and fears telling us. And then everything deepened, and it came to that more spiritual nature of presencing in the relationship. What's going on for me right now? Why am I being so reactive? There came that deepening for me, I would say, around about 2 years ago. Both my parents passed away, and my husband was ill for a year, and I was like mad woman, and I couldn't find myself, find my place, and I couldn't find someone to hold me so much. And I discovered Thomas's work, and I realized that I just needed to settle and see what was going on for me now. That my husband, for instance, offers me an incredibly safe space. My parents less so. Not that they were harsh, it was so subtle in some critical comments that used to come my way that I hadn't even realized it made me feel unsafe. And the more my husband showed up as safety for me, I didn't know what to do with that. So that was really a turnaround for me when all of them kind of disappeared from my life. And as I say, I became mad woman, and I needed to take a good, strong look at what was going on. And that's what really came up from me, that one place hadn't offered so much safety for me always, and one place really did. And and how do I bridge that kind of understanding in my life that I don't always know what to do with safety.
Right.
My husband
Did
speaks a very different language to me, although he's also South African and everything. His language of love, I suppose, if you like, or relationship, was so different from mine. He was that evolved part of me that I need to learn, if you like.
so did the safety that you talk about, was that did that did you react to that almost out of fear, or I mean, how so you, if I'm understanding you right, he provided you this place of safety, but it sounds like you weren't sure how to fit into that.
I wasn't sure because there's a lot of overlap between my father and my husband. They're both physicians. And my husband's offer of safety, like, I love you just the way you are and I accept you without the criticism. I understood that that was weakness. And my mother would say to me sometimes, he's a weak man. You know, he
Mm,
comes into the house and he's busy making dinner or he's washing, helping bath the children. Your father was working. He worked 27, 20 7 days a week, 24/7 kind of thing. Your husband takes breaks and he comes home and he's part of the family. And she made me feel that he was weak.
mm.
um, and what I noticed was with our children and our in-law children that there's a tremendous feeling of safety in our home. They're always coming and they ask him questions very easily. They consult him medically very easily. And I didn't have that sense of ease with my father. And when I explored it with my own coach, he said, your family clearly fits in easily with the sense of safety, but you often don't know what to do. So I would pop in and pop out. And when I was popping out, I became very critical of my husband and that, why can't you? And then when he was ill, he became even weaker in my eyes. And yet he stayed consistent and firm through all of that. And it was just an interesting observation that my coach said, you don't know what to do with the safety. So you're in and out of the relationship. You're in sometimes and you're out sometimes. Whether it's your children who were born into that safety, um, they don't question, just that
Or
place to rest. Because when you can find that safety, you rest, and then you can really become who you are supposed to become in this world.
did what you kind of going back just a little bit when you were talking about dream coaching? Are we
Mm.
talking dreams in the literal sense, like you're asleep and dream, or are we talking about like dreams and ambitions in
Oh,
life?
oh, definitely the latter. A
Okay.
dream being what matters to you in your life. In other words, what you must do in this lifetime. And it can be huge and it can be tiny, but there are things that you must do to feel that you've had a meaningful life.
Yeah. So I know me personally, there is, I'm mid 40s now, and for most of my life, a young adult, a teenager, and so forth, I harbored a lot of insecurities and a lot of fears, and I didn't really allow myself to be seen much. I mean, not that I was hiding, but I was kind of the homebody. And I've been able to make progress and manage to get rid of some of most of the fears and insecurities. I'm not going to say that there isn't things that take me back, but sometimes I struggle with a sense of relevance, a sense
Mhm.
of purpose. Is that something that you see a lot in relationships? Perhaps you have for instance, your husband sounded like he was very grounded with who he was. He knew who he was, and he was, he provided that back to you as to where you weren't used to that, um, that type of man. So
Mhm.
d- would would you say that there's kind of a what is my purpose, what is my relevance thing going on in these relationships, and that's why maybe one kind of shies away from the other?
Right. So you said a very beautiful thing. You said, I kind of try to make myself invisible. And my
Yeah.
feeling is that was a familiar feeling to you. That if we look back to to a very early time in your life, you learned that if I'm invisible, that's a very helpful thing for me to be. In other words, we often take on a role at a very young age that's very intelligent. Does that resonate with you that you needed to become invisible in order to survive, so to speak?
Yeah, no, it does resonate, and I would say I was
Okay.
probably about 12, 13 when I started kind of just I'd go to school and I would come home and head up to my room, and I would just stay in my room until, it was time to go to bed, and then get up and go back to school, and come home and
Right.
do the same thing. So I
Mm.
was in, and my mother worked nights, so she wouldn't be around anyways. Um, and I didn't have the greatest relationship with my stepfather, so that was kind of, I
Mm.
just went to my corner of the house and,
Right.
and stayed there, and was as low key as I could be. So
Right.
yeah, it definitely does resonate.
What usually happens is that there's something, a trauma isn't the experience. Trauma is an invisible guest that we have, but it's so overwhelming that we learn to manage it in certain ways. So, for instance, with you, there might have been something that taught you, I need to be invisible, otherwise, I'm going to be in big trouble. And the rest
Right,
of you, almost like a tree, excuse me, planted in the ground, the rest of you was growing up around that frozen part or that tree that was stuck. The river will flow around it. And then it was very intelligent and it helped you survive as a younger boy, as a young boy, but it didn't serve you in your adult relationships. People wondered probably why you weren't showing up because you did not show up. You were not there, I would
right,
imagine. Possibly at work, possibly in intimate relationships. We often see this across the board. We don't see it necessarily in one relationship. There's something and then you probably wondered, why don't you see me? Why don't people see me?
right.
Because you were giving out the message, don't come near, I'm invisible. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I can, as you were talking, I could even replay certain moments in my life where that was exactly the case, where I was, I stayed back in the background while everything went on before me, and
Mm,
I would stick my neck in there, very cautiously, different points in time, but for the most
mhm,
part, I did not like the limelight. I did
right.
manage to, once I got to the age of 40, and, I made, that's when I call it my coming to Jesus moment, where I decided, I'm not, life isn't as fulfilling as I think it should be. And I recognize myself as the contributor in that. So I knew I had to
Mm.
face my fears, and that was what I decided to do. Is, if it scares me, I'm going to do it, and if nothing else, just to say that I did it.
And that's very beautiful because you recognized your contribution at it. And very often I hear in relationships like that the other person was to blame. But we both have a contribution in a relationship that got us to where we are. And then you can say, oh, okay, you're bringing that to your consciousness, to your awareness, to what I said at the beginning, to that's presencing. Let me look at what I'm doing right now. Am I responding in this relationship as if I'm five? Or am I
Mm,
behaving in a way that is responsible? I'm responding as informed by feeling. Or am I being reactive as a child where I'm just reacting to my world without being informed by feeling? I am just reacting. Does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah.
So that's very beautiful when you realize your contribution. I have a part to play in why people don't see me, why I've been passed over for jobs, promotions, in relationships, why people leave me. I have a part to play. And
Mm,
it's not about blaming, and it's never about blaming or understanding our parents. We just want to understand the impact on your adult life when we look back.
yeah. Do you work much with with mental health, depression, anxiety? Is that part of your coaching practice?
Well, people will come with those symptoms. I don't treat them, but giving medication or anything.
Right.
And very often, a person will come to me who is medicated and doing really well, but still needs that support, that emotional support. So, my experience of most psychiatrists is they don't have the time or possibly the knowledge of how to support someone who's going through depression. I also very much like to support, and this is maybe where more of my support has been, people who have been in my situation where, excuse me, they were supporting someone who was going through. Um, how do you manage that? That's very tough as well.
Yeah. The with relationships, I don't know if this would be a loaded question or not, but what do you find more times than not is the underlying cause of a distant relationship or an unhappy marriage?
Right. So for me, it's looking back at that attachment trauma, distance. Again, if you keep yourself distant, it's something you've learned as a survival mechanism
Mm.
at a younger time. So when you go into the adult relationship, you're still taking something, but it's almost like jet lag. It doesn't fit anymore. It's not appropriate. It was an intelligent function at a certain time in your life, but it needs an update. And that's what trauma is. Trauma is frozen in time and space. It doesn't get the updates. It hasn't realized, oh, Brian's grown up now. He doesn't need that anymore, that distancing. He can actually become vulnerable, be courageous, and form a closeness and a true intimacy that's non threatening. Does that make sense? But it
Y-
needs an awareness.
Yeah. And what's the so when you're working with someone that has trauma and aren't they're not living the life that they want to live. What is kind of your process with them? I would imagine there's a lot to do with mindset, or at least
Mhm.
that would be my speculation. Um, what's kind of the approach when you work with somebody?
Right. So initially, it's just to hold that space where whatever feeling comes up, to give it a space. We
Yeah.
spend a lot of our lives looking away and distracting ourselves. So, in other words, if I'm sad, I need to eat something, or I'll go to the gym, or no, together, let's just hold that space because we co regulate each other. If you look at a child in the park, they go off, they might get hurt or scared, and they come back to the parent, and together the parent holds that child. The parent's nervous system relaxes and the child's nervous system relaxes, and the parent becomes boring and the child goes off. And we do that throughout our lives. Where are we safe and trusting, and where can we then take that and move off? But sometimes our parents weren't able to give us that. And that's what I will provide. I will almost, if you like, do the reparenting. I'm here with you, and it's okay. It's really okay to feel sad because I want to open up the range and expand them. We're not just happy. We're not just Facebook people, right? We want to
Right.
have, if we don't experience grief, grief is the correct response to loss. If we don't experience grief and sadness, we won't experience true passion and joy.
You mentioned social media in there. Social media today in here in 2021, and I guess we could go back a handful of years since it's really kind of taken off. What are you seeing in social media as far as do you find that a lot of folks uh, because Facebook is usually nobody posts the bad pictures. They always post the good ones where everybody's
Mhm.
laughing and having a good time. It's almost like you're trying to keep up with your neighbor. And I would imagine my theory is social media, over stimulation from social media, it can certainly um, bring on some of the anxiety, depression, feelings of
Mhm.
lack of worth. What are you seeing in
Right.
the social media space?
So I think we need to recognize that we're incredibly blessed that we have platforms like Zoom, like what we're speaking on, like
Right,
social media, where we can connect. Because especially now during this pandemic, right? We
right.
are so blessed that we have technology. However, if it comes at the expense of connection, in other words, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes now on social media because I don't really have someone to talk to and I'm feeling lonely, then there's something to look at. And what we tend to do is we tend to speak in a broadening of, I want more likes than a deepening. We all kind of drowning in this desire for a broadening. Let me have more and more likes, but we're starving for connection.
Yeah.
And then you spoke about the comparison, the confidence. We compare us. I compare myself to how you look, to how I feel on the inside. So I see a beautiful picture of you on Facebook and I'm feeling terrible on the inside. So I'm thinking like, Brian's got such a great life. I'm so miserable. So we're not even comparing. And that just impacts our confidence, because I didn't see the argument Brian had with whoever was in the picture with him beforehand or afterwards or whatever. I don't see the whole picture. I just see, oh, wow, look at the beautiful background, look at the person he's with. It all looks so stunning and fabulous. And I'm comparing it to how I feel on the inside. And that's very soul destroying. Very.
Right. There's and I would say with teenagers in particular, and I know we're in two different sides of the world, but I would imagine um, the human nature is pretty similar, just regardless of the cultures. But here in the United States, I see young girls, young teenage girls, they're striving, they're trying so hard to look older. When I was growing up and I was a kid, I mean, as kids, we just, we threw on our play clothes and we went outside, got dirty, rode bikes, and I don't see that even with my teenage boys. They grew up a lot faster than I grew up because I was
Mm.
playing video games and toys up until I was probably 14. And, my kids kind of left that toy phase like 7 and 8, and they started getting into sports and different things. But do you think we're today's generation, are, are we forcing them to grow up too fast?
I would say possibly both, and I would hesitate to give a general opinion because I don't feel an expert in that. It's not something I've spent a lot of time thinking about or I've explored. It's a very interesting question you're bringing up. So, for me, my perspective would be to look at the individual. If you say to me, "This is what I feel about my children," could we explore this? But it would be a specific exploration, excuse me, of your children, and curiosity. Do they feel they've grown up too soon? Do they feel have missed out on something? Does it work for them? Is it good? It might only, if they're teenagers now, they might in 20 years' time feel differently. That, oh my golly, I gave up on my childhood far too quickly, or gee whiz, it's been a great life. I really don't feel I can offer an expert or a general
Right.
opinion on that.
I had written down a quote from one of our prior conversations, and what I wrote down was, children are born into a state of being, and the
Mm,
parents expect the kids to take on more. Let's talk about that state of being a little bit, because I think that gets confusing for a lot of folks when you talk about just being present. I think
mm,
most people would say, "I am present. I'm here. I'm here today," but really they're not.
mm. So, when I talk about children having the right to be, children are born and they have the right to be. In other words, parents are obligated to nurture and nourish. The river, I always say, should flow down the hill rather than the other way around. What and then what happens is when children have the right to be and they're settled in that, it's almost like if you think of a bowl, they can become who they're supposed to become because they're settled in this place of being. However, what often happens is children take on a role too young. They might notice, mom's also only 4 and I'm 4. Maybe I need to look after mom. Maybe I need to take on a role of caring for mom. especially if we have a more
Mhm.
extreme a case of, say, an addiction, right? A parent who's addicted or a parent who's violent. So when I talk about trauma, it's not necessarily always something big and dramatic. It could be just like, as I was saying, in my case, my father never beat me or anything, but he was a critical man. And that was
Right.
my trauma. But I only realized that later in life, that there was a sense of dis-ease, if you like, when I would come home, because I wasn't sure when I'd walked off the red carpet, but I could walk off very easily, you know.
Mhm.
So when I say big, that a child has that right to be nurtured and to be loved and embraced. A child isn't supposed to take on a role that they're too young for, but that often happens. And then very often there's a very good payoff for that. When I take on the role of caring for mom well, I get her attention. Others, I
Mhm.
never get it. But that comes out in adult relationships. That can be a very painful place.
So with the adults, kind of the same thing would you say, because you do hear a lot from the different speakers, motivators, coaches out there about being in a state of being. Do you
Mm.
do you feel for adults that's just as important as it was for kids, or does it take on a different role in an adult life?
Right. So when I there's being and there's presence. I'm present with you in that I'm not say looking at my phone. I'm not thinking I want to be somewhere else, or I also not thinking I want to be with a more evolved part of you.
Mhm.
I want to meet you exactly where you are now. And that's what true love is. When I can meet you where you are now. Not I will be so much happier when you are more evolved and more
Yeah.
conscious. That just shows up how unconscious I am. Does that make sense? That's what being present is. Present. I'm here with you as you are right now, with the questions you're asking me right now. Not thinking, gosh, these are lame questions, or wow, these are too difficult for me.
Right.
Then I can really come in and answer them from a place of I'm not anxious, because there's no right or wrong answer here. We're just having a conversation. Does that make sense? When I can be here with you.
Yeah. Yeah. You have something on your website called the Power of No Challenge, and that caught
Mm.
my eye. What is the power of no?
Okay, so that's something that was actually used in the dream coach, which I also have taken from the dream coaching process. When we say no to something, we are able to say yes to what we really want in our lives. Sometimes something is costing us too much. It's got a high price for our health. It might even have a high financial price. The minute we say no, because that no longer works for me, then I can say yes to what does. And the secret, and here it is, I'm going to repeat this, the secret to a really happy life is to say more yes to the things that you love and want to do every single day. And by saying no, you're just being really clear on what your boundaries are. And people can check in. Is it okay for me, Brian, to ask you X, Y, and Z? And for you to say yes or no, or under these circumstances, I can do this. Under these circumstances, I can't. And again, that reverts back to relationships. When you're
Mhm.
very clear, I'm capable of doing this, I can't necessarily do that.
Do you find that as I've gone and I've coached and mentored folks in different capacities, there's a lot of resistance sometimes when you're offering um, a piece of advice, or especially when it comes to really wanting to live your dreams. And for me, I'm you know I'm big on overcoming fears. That's kind of my mission and goal in life, is to help others not live a life of fear like I did, and really allow themselves to be out there and be vulnerable. when you get the pushback, how hard is it to convince somebody to say yes for, whether it be a relationship or a job they want, a career? Um, how do you break through? What is it when you really have somebody that just like, no, I don't think the time's right, or wait until I got things a little more perfectly laid out.
So for me, it's not about convincing anyone. If I have to convince them, then I'm talking about myself. Then I'm bringing my agenda into the conversation, into that coaching,
Oh,
that conversation. And when they say no, not quite, this is not for me, then then I'm talking about myself. I'm saying maybe this could be good for you, maybe that would be good for you. And to me, that's not pure coaching work. That could be in a relationship, in a friendship, when I can say, but in coaching, I really want people to get to the answers, and I believe they have the answers, excuse me, within themselves. So if they have a fear around something, let's explore that. Let's be curious. What comes up for you? Because very often, what's sitting underneath fear is what they really, really desire. And
right.
then and then it's what one small step can you take to get there. So it's not a big step. It's usually a step that I say, well, that will make you smile because it's so non-threatening and easy. um, I call when I do help people with the more concrete dreams that they want to accomplish. I sometimes talk about a wow. What are you going to take on? In fact, I always talk to people like this. What do you get? What one thing you're going to do within 1 week? Wow, one within 1 week that will move you forward on your dream. What's one? Can it? Is it make a phone call? Maybe it's doing the research, some more research that's not going to threaten you. Just need to go online and I need to look up a little bit more about what it is that I want.
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about about your website and the different things that you offer. Obviously you have the coaching. It looks like you are a pretty well traveled speaker and workshops, and you got a lot going on there. Do you want to talk a little bit about the services that you offer?
So basically, it's speaking and one on one coaching and group coaching. What you might have noticed there are some of I began physically in Israel, a generous networking meeting where I would do it was kind of like a mastermind dinner. We would have about 12 people, and I would teach some of the tools of networking, and then we would actually practice it. And then when my husband became ill, I had to spend more time in Israel rather than traveling. And I decided to take that concept and make it and see how far reaching it could go. And I created Wish, which was Wisdom Share, where I would interview people like this for 5 minutes and just ask them to share a wisdom and then say to people, now you can reach out to Brian or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, Now I'm kind of going back to those people and seeing those. Some of them, there were people that I want to collaborate. That's kind of my word for this year, that I'd like to collaborate further with and do some more work with. So kind of that I would say in a nutshell is really what I do now.
Do you feel like so in today's COVID era, I'm imagining there's probably more remote coaching that's taken place than the one-on-one in person. Do you find that people are more resistant to coaching when it's virtual as opposed to face to face?
So I think that I feel that's probably past. Um, what I've noticed is it really depends on what's going on for the person. Last week, my client would not let me see her. And to accept, she said, We're just going to speak like this. I don't want you to see me right now."
Mm,
And I had seen her before, and just to allow her that space to feel that she could bring that up, that safety, that she could say, "I'm not comfortable right now with what's going on with me." And I think it's almost like a gift that we have, that she wasn't in a situation where she was ever coming to see me face to face, you know.
Right.
So now we could kind of play a little bit with the technology, and it had a wonderful effect.
Right. Do you work with many folks that have the relationship has broken, so maybe divorce has taken place or separation? Do you work with a lot of folks to help them get over that grief?
I'm hesitant just because you said to get over the grief.
Oh, yeah,
So,
you'll have to correct me.
no, 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 not at all. No, your language is precise. Uh, um, I work with people not only in intimate relationship challenges. It could be colleagues as well. But wherever it is, wherever there's a pain, yeah, there's a place to work and to integrate and see what the pain has come to teach me,
Mm.
why I'm feeling so, why is this so painful, and what are the lessons for me? Otherwise, we just go into another relationship and repeat that. We go into another job and repeat the same thing. So it's very beautiful when people can come and say, I need to explore, because we coexist. We don't explore things together by ourselves. That's why oh, self help books very often don't work. We need to explore together so we can co regulate each other, and we can see the shadow work together. That I need you to light a torch, you'd call it a flashlight, into my dark areas that I can't see, and go there with me so that I feel safe and that I could explore it together in a safe way. And that's where true healing comes.
If somebody wanted to get in touch with you to talk more about the coaching that you provide, you've got the website bev.co.il,
Mhm.
is what I've got here. Um, what other ways can they find you? Are you on Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, I'm not on Instagram. I'm doing some talks on Instagram, but that's because I'm being invited. Facebook, LinkedIn, and my email, which is bevehr, @gmail.com. But you can always messenger me through Facebook or through the website or through my email. Those, I would say, are the three easiest ways to access.
And it looks like you might have. Do you have a YouTube presence as well, or?
I do actually. I have a small YouTube presence where I do often, not often, I do sometimes put up some videos, but I hang out more in Facebook and through my email, through my website. That's you asked about social media. So for me, it's about finding that balance of spending time with the marketing, if you like, of the social media presence, and actually doing the work. So I'm not spread out with running from this platform to that platform. I really focus mainly on Facebook and a little bit on LinkedIn, a little bit on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. It's always better when you don't have to try to keep track of a whole lot of different links and whatnot. Uh,
Exactly.
as far as the links go, for your Facebook and website, I'll make sure that's all included
Thank you.
in the description. So anybody listening, don't worry, it'll be there for you. You don't have to try to write everything down or rewind, feel the need to rewind. But Bev, this has been a really great conversation, and it's your style of coaching intrigues me. And I know we've had a conversation about uh, having some, getting together again, and maybe going through a coaching session and putting that on
Mhm.
live. So I would definitely encourage the listeners to stay tuned for that. We'll work out the logistics, but I think there's a lot more that we could probably dive into with life and relationship coaching.
For
Um,
sure.
but there until you get into it, you never really know what's going to what's going on in the background of somebody's life
Right.
that's. holding them back. So you do have a 3-part video series too, I see. Would you recommend for folks to go check that out before, or if they're thinking about
Sure,
reaching out to you, or?
absolutely. I forgot about that series that I created. It's a free 3-part download. Gives the people a sense of who I am and hopefully helps you with some small part of your relationship. Sure. I forgot about that series.
Well, Bev, it's been great to talk to you. I look forward to talking to you again here in the near future and
Thank
sharing
you.
more with the listeners.
Me too. Thank you so much, Brian. I'm so pleased we found a time to do this.
Yeah, we did. And I guess for transparency, it did take us a couple weeks because I had to keep rescheduling, but finally found a day that works. So I appreciate it, and we will talk again real soon.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
And there you have it, my conversation with Bev Joy Ehrlich. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having the conversation with Bev. As I mentioned earlier on, we are doing some coaching, which she will be uploading to her YouTube page. Make sure you check it out. Link is in the description below. And please, by all means, give this podcast a follow, a thumbs up, send it out to your family and friends, spread the news, because I'm sure there is a message within each of these episodes that somebody that you know, possibly yourself, but if not, somebody you know that needs to hear. So please do give it a share. If you'd like to reach out to me, make sure you check out the links in the description. And if you would like to support the show, well, it's easy to do. And that link will be in the description as well. It is a PayPal me link. Make sure you check it out. If you want to support a show, hey, no pressure. But any contributions that you provide to the show will be used to make things better. Better studio, better recording devices, more guests. Who knows? The sky is the limit. So, hey, what can I say? That's it. The show's over. It's time to go. Thank you for hanging on for so long. Thanks for listening. And until next time, this is Brian saying, aim high, be courageous, and do amazing things.